everyone, Novels Wonderland here. Thank you all for the love and support you've shown me and the channel.
The apocalypse begins in the Marvel Universe, Chapter 219 to 224, Chapter 218. The government's trump card 1106 words. The steps of the enraged Hulk gradually quickened, soon turning into a full-fledged charge toward the X-Men. Storm tried to strike him with incandescent lightning, but the thick, python-like bolts striking the Hulk's sturdy body felt like little more than a tickle. They had no effect other than raising a cloud of white smoke. If even Thor's lightning had no effect on the Hulk, how could Storm's lightning possibly affect him? Consequently, Magneto stepped forward despite his severe injuries. Using the scrap metal on the ground, he formed a massive, Gundam-like mechanical fist in front of the incoming Hulk. With an iron fist even larger than the Hulk's body, he sent the beast flying over 1,000 meters away. However, as Magneto hunched over and spat out a large mouthful of blood mixed with organ fragments, the mechanical iron fist that had just been so effective instantly crumbled into iron slag like loose sand. "Stop, your body has already reached its limit." Shadowcat supported Magneto's body and reached into his chest, forcibly massaging his aging heart to keep him alive. The inability to spontaneously perform even the most basic physiological functions, such as a heartbeat, showed just how far Magneto had pushed his body. No, Magneto's trembling legs still moved forward. If there was one organ in his body still functioning normally, it was undoubtedly his brain, which carried his lifelong convictions. "Let me help you." Marcus, who had been mysteriously appearing and disappearing, descended from the roof once again. Without a word, he pulled out a syringe and injected a tube full of light pink liquid into Magneto's arm. "What are you doing?" asked Kitty, Shadowcat, her eyes wide open as she tried to save Magneto. "It's a cardiotonic," Marcus replied, explaining the main composition of the liquid, while simultaneously warning Magneto, "Don't expect the effects to be mild." "That is exactly what I want," Magneto said resolutely. With the drug taking effect, he stopped his bloody coughing and wiped the crimson from the corner of his mouth. Virus touch activated. Target, Magneto. Zombie virus injection successful, target is on the verge of death, mutant gene resistance failed, infection successful. Mutation process ongoing, mutation will be completed within 24 hours. Due to his extreme physical weakness, Magneto could not resist the invasion of the zombie virus despite his mutant genes. This was undoubtedly good news for Marcus, allowing him to extract all of Magneto's value before his death. Although the cardiotonic Marcus injected into Magneto was mixed with his own blood, its effects were real. However, this stimulant had been designed by Alex specifically with Marcus's highly regenerative physique in mind. For Magneto, who possessed the physique of an ordinary human, forcibly administering this injection would undoubtedly hasten his death greatly due to its severe side effects. But judging from Magneto's resolute gaze, he no longer cared about such things. "I will ensure that mutants receive the rights they deserve," Marcus promised Magneto, sounding almost as if he were delivering an elegy. No matter how Magneto interpreted this promise, at the very least, he no longer had any regrets. Accompanied by the screeching of truck tires rubbing against the ground, several military trucks carrying unknown cargo arrived at the entrance of the Mutant Academy. The officers in American uniforms disembarking from the vehicles indicated that these were reinforcements from the U. government and the enemies the X-Men were about to face. "Repel them," shouted Cyclops, who had survived the Red Hulk's assault. If even a villain like Magneto was willing to fight to the death for mutants, what reason did the X-Men have to hold back? Numerous mutant students rushed past Magneto, charging toward the heavily armored trucks and lunging at the American officers, who hadn't even drawn their pistols yet. However, the officer leading the reinforcements maintained his composure as the bizarrely shaped mutants charged at him. Without any haste, he ordered his subordinates, "Release the hunters." Suddenly, 5 or 6 figures burst from the cargo bay of each military truck, sprinting toward the attacking mutant students at an unusually fast pace. These strange individuals were covered in various tubes. They were clearly experimental subjects of a biochemical project. Their abnormal running speed alone was unsettling, and many mutants were extremely cautious about what abilities they might possess. This mystery was revealed the moment they engaged. The hands of these humanoid creatures, known as hunters, underwent astonishing mutations. First, they turned into black blood vessels, then coiled and reshaped themselves into machetes, sharp claws, spiked shields, and even freely moving appendages for combat. Every weapon they formed was incredibly sharp. Caught off guard, many mutants were torn to pieces or pierced to death by the hunters' bizarre weapons. After suffering an initial setback, the mutants quickly launched a counterattack, firing red or purple energy beams at the hunters. But before these beams could hit them, black, shell-like substances formed on the hunter's skin, acting as armor to block the attacks. Even if some powerful mutants managed to break through their defenses, the hunters could heal their wounds at an extremely rapid pace. After just one round of offense and defense, the mutants found themselves at a significant disadvantage. Looking at these hunters belonging to the government's reinforcements, a faint, almost imperceptible smile appeared on Marcus's lips. This ability to restructure and regenerate was undoubtedly the result of the blacklight virus modification that Marcus had long been seeking. And the reason these biological weapons created by the blacklight virus could carry out military operations in such an organized manner was due to the zombie control helmets manufactured by Tony. In other words, these hunters were actually a new species born from the fusion of the blacklight virus and Marcus's zombie virus. Each of them was connected to the zombie mental link dominated by Marcus. Currently, this group of hunters was being controlled in battle by the government using the zombie control helmets. However, if Marcus so desired, he could instantly bring all the hunters before him under his own control. Created by the combined effects of the blacklight virus and the zombie virus, each of these new zombie species possessed enough strength to contend with Alpha's subordinates and easily overpower most mutant students. It was no surprise that the X-Men suffered such heavy losses in their initial clash. Possessing such terrifying combat power, these hunters were undoubtedly the secret trump card of the U. However, every product of the Blacklight Project was the result of countless cruel human experiments. Was Captain America, who had just recently taken on the presidency, aware of this situation? Chapter 220, Chapter 219, Mutant number 1166 words. The formidable power displayed by the hunters was a pleasant surprise for Marcus. He hadn't expected that the evolutionary fusion of the blacklight virus and the zombie virus, which he had been pursuing, would be achieved first by the American government. The deployment of these biological weapons instantly neutralized the advantage Magneto had gained by unleashing his full-power Steel Storm, plunging the mutant side into an extremely dire situation. Controlling the lightning, Storm turned the hunters in front of her into charred corpses with deafening thunderbolts. The blinding, web-like lightning formed an insurmountable wall, halting the hunters' advance. No matter what weapons they morphed their limbs into machetes, claws, or tendrils, they were violently repelled by the high-voltage current. However, this only temporarily slowed their assault. The scorched hunters rapidly repaired their bodies, shedding their blackened husks like cicadas molting, and returned to the battlefield. While Storm's energy was rapidly depleting, the hunters suffered almost no casualties. Shortly after, when Storm's lightning wall weakened slightly, the hunters collectively morphed into their armored forms, encasing their bodies in thick cocoons, and forcefully breached the barrier. Immediately after passing through the lightning wall, one of them transformed its arm into a tendril and plunged it into the ground. Before Storm could realize what was happening, a thick, black spike erupted from beneath her feet and impaled her body. "Try to capture her alive, these mutants are very valuable," ordered the leading American officer to the operator in the truck, after seeing Storm incapacitated. Wearing a zombie control helmet, the soldier in the truck nodded and commanded the hunters to ignore the incapacitated Storm and continue their advance. Witnessing Storm impaled on the ground spike and suffering a gruesome fate, Cyclops hurriedly rushed to her side to save her, directly confronting the pursuing hunters. Sweeping the battlefield with his optic blasts, Cyclops knocked down numerous hunters in front of him. However, just like before, these monsters with their powerful self-healing abilities quickly got back on their feet, as if nothing had happened. Cyclops' reckless advance soon led to him being surrounded and attacked from all directions. Although he shot down countless approaching hunters with his controllable optic blasts, he only managed to incapacitate 3, or 4 of them due to bioenergy depletion before a giant hammer blow to the back of his head knocked him unconscious. The successive fall of their leader and deputy leader caused the X-Men to collapse even faster. The mutants retreated into the academy building in a panic, watching in shock as the hunters carried their fallen comrades into the trucks one by one. These monsters were so relaxed that they showed no concern whatsoever that the mutants might escape their grasp. Once they finished collecting the wounded mutants outside, the next wave of attacks would begin. Meanwhile, on the roof of the Mutant Academy, Marcus, having just finished injecting the virus into Magneto, returned to his vantage point. He continued to observe the battlefield, waiting for the moment when both sides would be utterly exhausted. Tony, on the other hand, began explaining the research data regarding these hunters, which he had extracted from the government's network. The code name for one of the DX-1118 virus test subjects is Hunter. It possesses the ability to transform a part of its body into a hard, black solid. Let's call it the black cocoon, for now, and it can morph this into any shape it desires. Thanks to the black cocoon's morphing ability, the hunter can transform its hands into various combat forms such as claws, heavy hammers, tendrils, fist blades, and sharp swords. It can even harden its entire body to form an armor capable of defending against weapons like rocket launchers, possessing immensely powerful close combat capabilities. Furthermore, the hunter has the ability to regenerate any organ in its body and recover from all kinds of injuries. With sufficient bioenergy support, it can reconstruct its entire body from a mere pool of blood. Therefore, short of depleting its bioenergy or destroying all its cells simultaneously, there is almost no way to kill a hunter. The inhibitory effect of carbon nanosteel alloy has yet to be tested. Hunters can replenish their bioenergy by consuming flesh and blood. Eating living organisms restores more energy, but they can also replenish energy from corpses when necessary. Marcus looked down at the corpse-strewn battlefield below. Several hunters had already begun plunging their tendrils into the bodies of fallen American soldiers, digesting and consuming them to replenish their energy. In this sea of corpses and bones, they had no worries about lacking enough flesh and blood. Perhaps the temporary pause in their attack was merely for resupply. Gazing at this terrifying biological weapon with admiration, Marcus exclaimed, "The two viruses have fused perfectly within these monsters. I have to say, the government did a fantastic job this time. This is the most efficient research and development activity I've ever seen from government scientists. You know, most of the time they just spew a bunch of hot air," Tony mocked in his usual manner. Creating weapons they couldn't control was nothing to be proud of. But I must admit, their combat power is formidable. At this rate, the X-Men are about to lose. Hulk will be coming back soon, too. It's not that simple, Marcus retorted with a smirk. There is still a big fish I need to catch. You mean, the Dark Phoenix? At this point, the only figure more terrifying than Magneto was the Omega-level mutant, the Dark Phoenix. She was truly an ultimate monster capable of destroying the planet. Marcus said ambiguously, "Rather than letting her cause trouble for us later, it is better to take care of her here as well." "All right, I hope you are as reliable as before," Tony said with a wry smile, fully aware of what the Omega level meant. After all, Magneto, who had just displayed immense power, was only an alpha-level mutant, and it was unknown how long it would take for the Hulk, whose strength increased with his rage, to reach such a terrifying level. It was hard to imagine what kind of tragic scene would unfold once the Dark Phoenix awakened. Furthermore, it was worth noting that the power range of individuals at the Omega level, the highest tier in S power classification, was exceptionally broad. For instance, in the original comics, the chaos magic wielded by the Scarlet Witch, who had reached the Omega level, could only fight on par with a Phoenix avatar possessing a mere fifth of the Phoenix Force during the Marvel 2012 event. Judging from this, it was impossible to imagine just how powerful the Dark Phoenix would be with the full Phoenix Force. In Tony's view, managing to take down Magneto was already an incredibly massive victory. Provoking an entity like the Dark Phoenix was truly unwise. Yet, facing such a terrifying enemy, Marcus simply made an offhand comment like, "Take care of her as well." Tony really couldn't fathom what he was thinking. Chapter 221, Chapter 220, the final struggle. While Marcus and Tony continued discussing the imminent threat of the Dark Phoenix, a notification flashed across Tony's HUD. He turned to Marcus and reported, "Xavier's position has been confirmed. And mutant number 143, borrowed from William Stryker, is already in place." William Stryker, the infamous antagonist from X-Men, was the director of the government's Weapon X program, the man responsible for creating the two immortal weapons, Wolverine and Deadpool. Leveraging his authority as Secretary of Defense, and a healthy dose of intimidation, Tony had secured several key research assets from Stryker, including significant quantities of adamantium, and one extremely valuable mutant No. Mutant number 143 was none other than Jason Stryker, Stryker's own son. A former student of Xavier's school, Jason possessed the terrifying ability to manipulate others' brainwaves and force powerful hallucinations onto them. Years of his father's cruel experimentation had stripped him of any sense of self. He was now nothing more than an empty shell, a tool meant to obey. Yet his psychic ability remained frightening. Even an Omega-level telepath like Professor X could be overtaken by Jason, given enough time and proximity. Marcus casually picked up Loki's scepter, maintaining the Mind Stone's psychic barrier. "Then what are we waiting for?" he said. "Let's move." Moments after Marcus and Tony departed, the second wave of hunters surged forward. The sight alone was enough to freeze the students' blood. Dozens of hunters' arms reshaping into hooked blades, cleavers, hammers, tendrils, shields charged with inhuman speed, wrapped head to toe in hardened chitin and backed by obscene regenerative ability. With Cyclops and Storm captured, and Magneto barely clinging to life, the Academy was leaderless. "What do we do? Do we run?" a trembling student whispered. "Run where?" another replied bleakly. "You've seen how fast they move. Even if we escape today, the whole country will hunt us down." At that moment, Magneto forced himself upright. Blood streamed down his torn abdomen, yet his voice carried the same pride it always had. "If you want to run, then run. As long as I still draw breath, they will not pass this doorway." He raised a trembling hand. At once, the metal debris across the courtyard shuddered and rose like an orchestra responding to its conductor. They twisted, merged, and formed into towering metallic golems, iron soldiers with bodies of armored steel. The iron constructs marched forward, colliding violently with the charging hunters. Steel fists hammered into black chitin. Blades scraped across iron bodies. Sparks and blood sprayed into the air. One moment, a hunter's head was crushed like a melon, the next, a steel golem was sliced clean in half. The war raged evenly, hunters repairing themselves by devouring corpses, iron golems pulling nearby metal to rebuild their shattered limbs. Thus, one man Magneto was holding back the entire hunter battalion. "Damn it, the officer snarled. "Can't that old corpse just stay down? We're using plastic trucks, why can't we use plastic weapons to kill him too?" His subordinate sighed. "Because he's Magneto." A roar like a collapsing mountain interrupted their conversation. The Hulk, thrown miles away by Magneto earlier, returned with fury vastly greater than before. He no longer distinguished friend from foe. Every hunter and every iron golem in his path was pulverized instantly. Even the shockwaves from his footsteps blasted bodies into the air. And Magneto in his fading vision saw the Hulk as an unstoppable cosmic projectile crashing toward him. He understood. The Hulk's strength had grown past anything he could resist. Phantom Cat prepared to phase Magneto underground to escape, but stop. Magneto's roar shook the building. No one had ever heard him shout this loudly, not even in his youth. "I said they will not take one step inside this hall." The courtyard thundered. Thousands of tons of metal surged upward like a tidal wave. Blood-soaked iron fragments, corpses, shattered armor, everything was swept into the air. The hunters, still mobile, were instantly bound in layers of metal and helplessly lifted into the storm. All the steel converged toward a single target. He was like a gravitational core attracting all matter around him. If Magneto lost control for even a moment, the entire building's rebar structure would be ripped apart. Slowly, agonizingly, Magneto closed his fingers. The tidal wave of metal collapsed toward the Hulk, wrapping around him layer by layer. It was a burial, a metal storm analogous to the sand coffin and sand burial of the shinobi world, except here, every grain of sand was a blade. To the core of the earth with you. Blood flooded from Magneto's mouth. His vision blurred. His body trembled uncontrollably. The iron tide swallowed the Hulk whole while Magneto's failing heart fought to beat just 1 second longer. He had unleashed the last song of the Master of Magnetism. Chapter 222, Chapter 221, A temporary victory. The Hulk thrashed violently within the metallic ocean, each swing of his massive fists shattering entire walls of steel. Yet no matter how explosively he broke them apart, even powdered fragments were drawn back together under Magneto's command, reforming and crashing toward him in an endless tide. He had strength, unmatched brute strength. But no leverage. Not against Magneto at full power. The harder Hulk struggled, the deeper his wounds became. Finally, overwhelmed, he was swallowed completely by the layered steel torrents buried under countless tons of metal, compressing him like a colossal hydraulic press. When Magneto's trembling fingers finally closed into a fist, the metal surrounding Hulk, previously tens of thousands of tons, had been crushed into a sphere barely the height of a man. Inside it, Hulk's skeleton and every ounce of his muscle had been compressed tens of thousands of times over. Then Magneto hurled it downward with all remaining strength, and gravity did the rest. Boom, 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 boom. The impact was apocalyptic. A meteor striking Earth would not hit as hard. The sphere's minuscule point of contact unleashed pressure beyond anything found in nature. The ground cracked open violently as the orb drilled straight down, tearing through layers of Earth toward the planet's core. A colossal pillar of soil and debris erupted skyward like a rocket plume, its peak lost somewhere beyond the cloud layer. No one knew how deep the sphere plunged, how many layers of stone it crushed, only that Magneto's promise of sending Hulk on a journey to the Earth's core was no longer a metaphor. The hunters that had been caught with Hulk shared the same fate, crushed cell by cell long before reaching any magma. Whether the molten depths awaited the Hulk, only one who returned alive would know. Having unleashed such monstrous techniques, first the steel storm, now the steel tsunami, Magneto's body was barely holding together. Blood poured freely down his robes, but he forced himself upright, steadying his collapsing frame with the metal around him. He was past his limit. Far past it. Only sheer will greater even than the magnetic field he commanded kept him standing between the mutants and annihilation. Who's next? Magneto roared toward the distant military convoy. America's prized hunter battalion wiped out like insects. Officer panicked. Get us out of here. I mean, preserve the valuable mutant specimens. The priority. Whatever excuse they used, nothing could hide the truth. Magneto had defeated them. The remaining mutants finally exhaled in relief. They had survived barely. Had they the strength, they would have cheered with everything they had. But Jean Grey could not share their relief. Cyclops, Storm, and many students had been taken. And there was no guarantee the military wouldn't return with stronger reinforcement. She lifted her gaze to the distance. She could still feel Xavier's presence, yet the bond between teacher and student had been severed. She swallowed the ache in her chest and addressed the survivors. Everyone still capable of moving, gather here. We must remain alert. The enemy might not be done. Professor X, hiding in an ordinary residential house, sensed everything unfolding on the battlefield. His belief remained firm. The Avengers represented justice, and the mutants' rebellion was misguided. And then he suddenly realized he could no longer sense the brainwaves of the soldiers stationed outside. He turned back and found Marcus standing before him, Loki's scepter in hand. Good evening, Professor, Marcus greeted mockingly. I was just wondering why not mind control one of your students to stab Magneto in the back. You could have ended the war instantly. Say that again, Xavier warned coldly, and I will scramble your brain myself. But when he attempted to probe Marcus's mind, a familiar energy flared. The Mind Stone. His psychic attack was repelled effortlessly. "You," Xavier whispered. "You're the one who sees the helicarrier in New York." Marcus smiled. "Not here to explain the details." He pressed the scepter's point against Xavier's chest. The Mind Stone's glow sealed off Xavier's telepathy completely. Tony Stark entered, pushing a wheelchair. Seated in it was a frail young man wearing white hospital garments with mismatched blue and yellow eyes. "Mutant no. Jason Stryker. Why are you here?" Xavier breathed. He knew the boy knew the horrific power caged inside his withered body. And he knew exactly what Stryker had used him for. A dreadful realization dawned. "What are you planning?" Marcus didn't bother answering. Tony positioned Jason directly in front of Xavier. The boy's vacant expression didn't flicker not even once as a neural link began forming. "No, stop." Xavier struggled violently, but he was helpless without his telepathy. 3 days of work had allowed Tony to perfect the Mind Stone's shielding. Jason's psychic waves slid past it, effortlessly penetrating Xavier's mind exactly as they once did in X2, when he nearly killed every mutant on Earth. But this time was smoother. Unopposed. "What do you want?" Xavier gasped, his autonomy slipping away. Marcus leaned close. "Oh, not we, you are going to do this." He pointed at Xavier, then turned to Jason with a cruel smile. "Let's release the Dark Phoenix. For readers who would like early access, my Patreon is available for just $4 per month. You'll unlock 90+ advanced chapters and help support ongoing works. U equals 79514336. You may also search Translator Sama directly on Patreon. Your support is sincerely appreciated. Chapter 223, Translator Note. I am taking rest from this FIC, because I don't get anything from it, no comments, no reviews and no response. I feel that my time is wasted on this one, and many chapters are in wrong orders that even I don't understand how. That's why I am taking rest on this one. I will be back, but when I don't know. Chapter 224, Chapter 223, Never Slaves. The American public watched the broadcast in stunned silence. Their military appeared to have gained the overwhelming advantage against the mutants, yet nothing about the scene unfolding on screen inspired pride, relief, or patriotic confidence. Instead, what the world saw was grotesque. What were those hideous creatures? Were they really creations of the U government? If not, why were the officers standing comfortably behind them, watching? Next to these abominations, the lone, blood-soaked figure of Magneto fighting to his last breath to protect Xavier's school was the only one who looked remotely human. Admirable. And yet, he was a mutant. How could they possibly support him? A painful contradiction pressed on every viewer's heart. Why couldn't the government simply engage the mutants openly and honorably and win in a way citizens could be proud of? This hollow, shameful victory was something none of them wanted to cheer for. More importantly, where was the man they trusted most, the one they voted for, the living symbol of honor and justice, their president, Captain America? As doubt and anger bloomed across the nation, one face became the target of unprecedented public hatred. William Stryker. He knew exactly what this meant. His future was finished. His reputation as a war hero was gone, replaced with the mark of a national disgrace. And the longer Magneto kept fighting, the more the public's rage towards Stryker intensified. Desperate, he screamed at the operators controlling the hunters, "Forget capturing him alive. Kill that old freak now. We must stop this broadcast immediately." The hunters surged forward. Magneto's wounds multiplied rapidly. But even as every bone in his body cracked, as his consciousness flickered on the brink of fading forever, he kept fighting, supported only by the iron will that defined his entire life. He had never shone brighter. "My children." With a sweeping slash, he forced back the hunters and lifted his gaze toward the helicopter above, to all mutants watching around the world. In the next instant, the hunter's blades pierced him. 5, 6 edges of hardened black chitin drove straight through his body. But even mutilated beyond recognition, he forced out one final roar: "Mutants will never be slaves." The hunters tore him apart. His body was carved into a dozen pieces, but no one remembered the gore, only the cry that lingered like thunder in their hearts. The world heard it. Every mutant saw it. And silence crashed across the earth. Then the world erupted. Like a spark falling upon a forest soaked in gasoline, Magneto's death ignited global mutant uprisings. From America to Europe, from Asia to Africa, mutants finally understood why they had to unite, why they could no longer bow their heads. The era of restraint was over. Governments across the globe plunged into chaos. What began next was darker than World War II. Humans and mutants slaughtered each other with ruthless efficiency never seen in history. Exactly as Marcus had intended. From this moment on, no nation, no organization would have the strength or attention to worry about him. Inside the Academy's underground tunnels, Jean Grey collapsed to her knees, sobbing as she felt Magneto's final moments through telepathy. He had once been a villain intent on destroying humanity, yet today, he died as a hero of mutant kind. Kitty Pryde, who had come back searching for her, grabbed Jean's arm. "Jean, we have to go. If we can find Logan, I can send him back in time again. We can reset everything. He's missing, but he's alive, I'm sure of it." "No, Kitty, go without me." Jean clutched her head. Moments ago, she had felt something terrifying. The psychic seal holding back the Phoenix Force was weakening. She had stayed behind to keep the others safe, but now Kitty had returned, unknowingly putting herself in mortal danger. And the seal weakening made perfect sense. The psychic cage that bound the Phoenix had been forged by Professor Xavier, and Xavier was now in Marcus's hands. Jean's pupils flickered. A blazing Phoenix symbol surfaced within them. Kitty hadn't even realized the danger yet when she felt herself caught not by hands, but by an overwhelming telekinetic pressure so dense it felt like she was trapped under the weight of the ocean's deepest trench. She tried to phase through it, but even in intangible form, the force would not let her go. "What are you doing?" Then she saw it, the entire Academy lifting into the air. The walls, the ceiling, every piece of debris, even the hunters outside, were suspended, helpless, like insects trapped in amber. Only one person remained grounded, kneeling on the floor: Jean Grey. Or rather, the Dark Phoenix. She rose slowly. One by one, the hunters imploded. Their bodies burst apart into dust finer than ash, erased down to the atomic level. Telekinetic disintegration, an ability that transcended molecular bonds themselves. Short of adamantium or vibranium, nothing in existence could withstand that power. With a single gesture, she could unleash destruction equal to a nuclear blast. And the Phoenix, driven by instinct, rage, and desire, had never been one for restraint. Phoenix. A telekinetic shockwave erupted outward, flattening what remained of the Academy and erasing everything else within its reach. The harbinger of annihilation had awakened. Shout out to Samuel and Leonardo Ibarra. A huge thank you to Samuel and Leonardo Ibarra for joining my Patreon and supporting the journey. Your support means a lot and helps keep the chapters coming faster. Welcome to the VIP Club. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Novels Wonderland.